Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm back with a new Complete Run Madness series. We're starting another new title. I know I have several that we're in the process of showing off, and we'll eventually get back to all of those. No worries. However, I'm currently hard at work on my next comic that I'm putting out, my Fantasy Comic Quest issue 4, which is going to be coming out soon on Kickstarter, and I'm doing a lot of work on it. So that's got me in fantasy comic mode. So it's time, finally to show off something that I've been threatening to show off for a long time, and that is my complete run of Conan the Barbarian. Just real quick before we get started, if you are interested in my Fantasy Comic Quest, the link to the pre-launch page is in the description down below. But yes, I have a complete run of Conan the Barbarian. I have to say, I haven't actually read the whole run yet. I've read a lot of it. This isn't the first time that I've tried to put together a run of Conan the Barbarian. I did it multiple times back in the 80s and 90s. And so I read a lot of the run at that time, and I have a couple, I have a trade collection, a couple that have the first 12 issues. I've read those. There's a bunch of issues here and there I've read, but I've never read the whole run. So there's big gaps where I'm probably not going to have a whole lot to say. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the format just slightly on this. Usually when I have these really long runs, I break them up into 50 issue blocks. So it'll be 1 to 50, 51 to 100, something like that. This time we're going to do it a little bit differently because I felt like it was fitting to just do the first 24 issues of Conan the Barbarian. Those of you who collect Conan or have read Conan will immediately understand why. And if you don't, I'm going to tell you why right now. So no suspense, but it's because the great Barry Windsor-Smith, who at the beginning of the run was just going by Barry Smith, he did the first 24 issues and then left the series. And his art got better and better and better and better as it went. I mean, drastically improving as he went, until by the end of the series, he was sort of the Barry Windsor-Smith that everyone knows as one of the great comic book artists. And so this is a classic run. Roy Thomas doing the writing on all of these. A lot of them are very close adaptations of original stories by Robert E. Howard. Some of them aren't. And just on a broader scale, if you look at Conan the series as a whole, the first 115 issues are all done by Roy Thomas, and they do tell one chronological story of Conan's life, mostly being adapted either strictly or very loosely adapted from the original source material. And then after issue 115, Roy leaves the book, they bring in new people, and then it's just kind of a crapshoot. There's a lot of stories after he leaves that don't really have any real connection to the original stories, and the mythology starts getting really weird and muddled. People bring in all sorts of weird sci-fi, fantasy elements that aren't really from Conan. So it gets to be a real mixed bag after that. But these first 115 issues are really cool, and in particular these first 24. So today we're just going to show you the first 24 issues, starting of course with issue number 1. Now I want to say, I've mentioned this a few times in the past, but I have really nice copies of issues 1 through 7. Of those, issue 1 is probably the lowest grade, and it's still really nice. It does have a little bit of a color breaking crease in the top right corner, which is a little unusual. Usually it's over here, but it is here. I would probably put this at a 7 or so. Most of it, the other ones I'm about to show you, issues 2 through 7, are higher grade. There's a lot of 8s, 8.5s, and some get into the 9 range even. I got all of these from the same place. They're all from an original owner collection. Sadly, the original owner passed away. But when he passed away, I was able to get these first 7 issues. Also issues 23 and 24. Which we'll be showing later. So, I keep that provenance close to my heart. We want to respect those collectors that came before us and allow us to have these nice collections, because this person kept really good care of their comics, bought these off of the stands back in 1970. And so here we are, issue number 2. Again, these issues 2 through 7 in particular are really sharp, high grade copies. Here's issue 3. again, it's probably around an 8. It's got a little bit of a bend in the bottom left corner, blunted corners basically, but a beautiful copy. Now, this copy has been sort of more expensive than issues 2 or 4 for as long as I can remember. It's always been listed in like the Overstreet Guide as having as being scarce, like those distribution issues. I don't know. I've read that wasn't really true. So I don't know what the truth is, but for whatever reason, issue 3 has a reputation as being harder to find than 2 or the either issue 2, 1 or 2, but also the issues after it. Oddly enough, it's the only one of the run that I actually have multiple copies of. I do have 2 copies of 23, but I have a really, really trashed copy of number 3. So it's actually one of the easier ones for me to find. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm really glad to have a really nice copy. Here's issue 4. You can see Barry Smith here is still very much in his sort of copying Kirby era. He's sort of just coming out of that here in 1970 when he started at Marvel, like a couple years, year and a half before this. It was very much copying Kirby. You could see the potential, and as the series goes along, his work gets much more intricate. Here's issue 5. Again, a lot of these are close adaptations of the original source material. Here's a really nice copy of issue 6. As I mentioned, I have trade collections with issues 1 through 12, so I haven't felt the need to actually read the original so that they can stay in nice, pristine shape since I already have these nice reprints. Here's issue 7, which is the last of the original owner books that I have. But actually, my copy of issue 8 is quite nice. I got a really good deal on it as well. It's actually a very, very, very nice copy. It's got a little bit of a bend along that runs parallel. You can barely see it. It's I'm not even sure it's really color breaking. It's just sort of a suggestion of a bend here, but it's still really nice. Again, higher grade, 7.5, 8 range. Issue 9. This is the first of the issues I have that's sort of in lower grade, but it's still nice mid-grade copy in the 5 range. Issue 9. There's some of these, including this one. There's multiple, like, there are rejected covers that he did where for whatever reason they didn't like the design, so they had him do a new version of the cover. This is one of them. I've seen the original design bouncing around online. Number 10. Now this is a double-sized. This one's actually pretty beat up. It's got some staining. It looks like it might have some rust at one of the staples, but it's a square-bound 25-cent issue. What's interesting about this is that it's cover dated October of 1971. Now, in November of 1971, Marvel put out these double-sized 25-cent issues of all of their series, which we see here with issue 11. So what's odd is that there's 2 25-cent issues. All the other titles that I have from Marvel from this period just have the one from November. My understanding has been that Marvel was originally going to do a bunch of they were just going to go to 25-cent double-sized issues, exactly the same thing that DC did with their big 25-cent issues, right? And then when DC did the same thing, Marvel realized they had an opportunity to basically steal the march on DC. So after one issue, they dropped it back to regular sized issues at 20 cents each. And so the kids going in the store were like, oh, the Marvels are 5 cents cheaper. So even though the books were only half as big, they started outselling them quite a bit because of the price difference, right? And so Marvel took these 25-cent double-sized issues that they already had in the works and just split them in half, right? I know that's what happened like with Avengers 94, 95, for instance. But this is the only title that I have and that I'm aware of. I haven't really done any research where there were actually two 25-cent issues back to back. So I find that interesting. Here's issue 12. Now, another thing that's interesting here, we're starting here with issue 12, is this, I think, is the first issue in the run that does not have a Barry Smith cover on it. This looks like a Gil Kane cover to me, and it's a great cover. I love the black frame. This is another nice mid-grade copy. Of course, with the black, it's really easy to see the flaws. You can see here that I got this for $9.75. Actually, that's basically what I paid for all of these issues around here. Some a little bit more, but like issue 9 was $14. 10 was $8. That one's more. That one has the water damage. Number 11 was $12. This was $9.75. Number 13, also we're in the frame era now, also $9.75, and it's a nice copy, mid grade, but a little bit higher than the last one, probably in the 6.5 range. So really nice book, and I'm highlighting the price because of how affordable these comics still are. Conan, from my understanding, from what I've read from Roy Thomas, did not sell well at first. So it started off okay with issue 1, and then it had a decline, and there was talk about canceling it as of issue like 5 or 6. And Roy convinced Stan Lee to give him more time on the book, and it picked up somewhere shortly after that, or I forget exactly what. I'm sure someone in the comments will know the exact details, but somewhere around issue 7, the sales started going back up. But for a lot of these, like, it wasn't a huge hit at first. It took a while to sort of build up and become sort of the classic series that ended up running for 25 years. So it's not like there's like a huge amount of copies. You know, there's not as many of these as there would be of like Spider-Man or something. And Conan's still very popular today, but for whatever reason, it's actually still quite affordable to get. All of these early issues. It's really only the first issue and the keys we'll show at the end of the video here that are a little more expensive. Now here's a really interesting two-parter. It's issues 14 and 15, The Coming of Elric. So of course what's really interesting about this two-parter is that Elric is not from Robert E. Howard. It's from Michael Moorcock. It's from a completely different series of books in a completely different fantasy universe. And I think there was some complicated legal issues around the rights here. So I'm not 100% sure where this is at in terms of reprinting the story. But it's an interesting two-parter that's sort of like a When Worlds Collide. This is one of the cases where, again, for the most part, Roy is sticking to the original stuff. He does work in some Conan stories from later authors that did work after Howard. This is one of the rare instances, or rarer instances, where he's bringing in other source material to adapt into the Conan series. I'm not really sure it works, to be honest. It's just kind of weird to have this character from a completely different mythology and universe in there. We do get some really cool covers, though. I love, again, black frame cover, really hard to beat. This is issue 15. Some really interesting work from Barry Smith. Doesn't have the Windsor in his signature yet. Here's an all-time classic, issue 16, what they call Night of the Frost Giants, on this version. Now, there's multiple versions of this story because the original was had some adult content in it, and Barry Smith drew a version of this with nudity and stuff like that. And so that eventually appeared, I forget if it was Savage Tales or Savage Sword of Conan, but in the black and white magazines where they didn't have to abide by the code and they were meant for more mature audiences, they were able to publish the uncensored version with the nudity. So there are two different versions of this story out there. Here's issue 17, which has a really interesting art team on the cover, and that is pencils by Gil Kane, but the inks are by Frank Brunner, and it does give it a different look. You can really see the difference in the inking style here, like the fine line work. Gil Kane, of course, has a very specific look to his inking in particular, makes it very obvious to tell. I mean, there's also certain standard poses, like the way this guy is standing, this shape of this leg, with the other leg, you can't see it here, but this is like a classic Gil Kane. It's got so many characters with that. But anyway, with the Frank Brunner inking, it really gives it an interesting look. But we're also seeing here that Barry Smith is starting to have trouble with the deadlines. The book was originally bi-monthly and it went to monthly, and he's never been the fastest artist. And we start to get in not just other artists doing the covers, but you also start to get a couple of like fill-in issue sort of things here. Here's issue 18. The cover's not signed, but I'm not sure who drew it, to be honest. Some of the inking does look a little bit like Kane, and he was doing a lot of covers at the time, but it doesn't quite look right to me. But anyway, here's issue 18. And the difference between this art on the cover and Barry Smith. Now, when Barry Smith comes back here for these next couple, the art, it takes a jump. Like the extra time that he was spending, I would really like to get a high grade copy of this. You know, I'm not really a high grade guy, but something, and I'm also colorblind, but something about the colors in this cover have always really grabbed me. And Barry Smith's art is getting more and more detailed. It's more mature. It's looking more and more like, you know, the Barry Windsor-Smith stuff that we think of. Again, I love this cover. I love the really unusual color palette of the cover. And he does another great, super detailed cover here on the next issue, issue 20. So check out that cover there for issue 20. Again, interesting color as well. We're getting colors like in terms of even just the frame that you're not really getting on other Marvel books, because I've got a lot of frame covers from different series, and most of them are just your basics, you know, black, white, red, yellow, sometimes blue. But Conan's got all sorts of interesting and offbeat shades here going on, but just look at the art on this. And also, just the detail work on the background, obviously, but the figure work that he's doing here with the woman lying there, it's really great. Issue 20, this is actually one of the most expensive issues that I have in the run, other than the first few. I paid $14.75 for this, and I'm not 100% sure why it was more expensive than the others. It's a nice copy, but again, it's mid-grade. Great black frame. And this is the issue that has the big blurb that says, winner of the comic book industry's own Academy Award for Best Comic Mag. There was like a comic book Academy Awards a couple years here in the early 70s. This is also a great cover that's very similar to a cover that he did for I'm not showing it today, but for a little bit later he did for a giant size Conan #1. Has a very similar pose, but that's even further like Barry Windsor-Smith. Like he's developed, but you can just see how far his art has come in the couple years between issue 1 and issue 21. It's just a great, great cover. And then check out this awesome cover here for issue 22, which again still has the price on it, $7.75. This one has a bit of a roll, a little bit of a tear at the bottom as well. But look at the beautiful, beautiful line work here. It's so tremendous. Now, one important thing about this cover is that this was supposed to be the first appearance of Red Sonja. So you'll see it's called Shadow of the Vulture, and we have the bad guy here is this character, the Vulture, and he's got his big wings. He's not an angel, those are big vulture wings. And in the story, The Shadow of the Vulture, we get the first appearance of Red Sonja. However, he was late with the pencils. And so if you read the inside, there's a blurb that's like, well, due to circumstances beyond our control, we don't have the comic for you. So the interior of this is a reprint of issue 1. But it means that when we do get the first appearance of Red Sonja, it's not until the next issue. And because they already used the awesome Barry Smith cover for that issue on issue 22, we get a Gil Kane cover instead for Red Sonja's first appearance. And on both of these, Red Sonja is not on either of the covers. But that's why we end up with this Gil Kane cover on issue 23, the first appearance of Red Sonja. And it's because he was late. They had the cover done for this story, but didn't finish the interior in time. So this was originally supposed to be 22. And I've said this many times, but I want to stress for anybody who's not familiar, if you're thinking about getting the first appearance of Red Sonja and you're going online to buy it, it is this issue. It's issue 23. It's not issue 24. If you go on things like eBay and you'll Google like first Red Sonja, you're going to see a bunch of listings that have it correct as 23. You're going to see a bunch of listings that say it's issue 24, but this is absolutely 1,000,000% the first appearance of Red Sonja. She appears throughout the story on a number of pages. She's integral to the plot. She's introduced with her full name, the whole 9 yards. Like, it is a full first appearance, not a cameo, nothing like that. Now, issue 24 is her first cover appearance. And it's an all-time classic. This was voted the best cover of the year by comic fans, I think for 1973. It's still arguably the best cover for any Conan comic, I think, period. And the story is better in issue 24 than 23. So for me, again, 23, big key, first Red Sonja. 24, you could argue equal key. Because it's such a great book for so many reasons besides being the second Red Sonja. But here it is. You can see it's called The Song of Red Sonja. And it's got Red Sonja there on the cover in her original costume or outfit, which is the full chainmail shirt and shorts, which I much, much prefer to her absolutely idiotic looking chainmail bikini. These are the only 2 issues. She's had lots of different looks, since then in the last 50 years. But she only appears with this original outfit in the first 2 issues, and her third appearance in Savage Sword of Conan 1 is when she gets the chainmail bikini, which is a whole different story. But look at the amazing, amazing line work. The detail, the figure work. The figure work on Conan, I gotta say, is so, just in the space of like 6 or 7 issues, has gotten like much, much better. And it's got like all the people they're fighting, the bodies, the swarm of people, the crowds, like everything. The coloring is great. It makes our heroes really pop out. Again, it's got Red Sonja on the cover, and it's got her name and logo right there for the first time on the cover. So it's absolutely amazing comic, big key. Anyone who's a fan of Red Sonja has to get both of them, just like anyone who's a fan of Conan needs to get both of them. The creation of Red Sonja is kind of a long story. I won't get into all the details here. There is a character called Red Sonja in the Robert E. Howard books. It's spelled with a Y, and there's not a lot of detail there. So Roy basically took the name and just the basic idea of having like this female swordswoman and created this version of Red Sonja. So the rights to this Red Sonja are really complicated, because my understanding is that Roy owns like part of there was like almost like a separate company was set up that Roy is part of, along with like the Robert E. Howard estate or something, and they have like some kind of weird co-ownership deal. I don't really understand it. But is just an absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful cover. And that's it. He's off the book. He's done. That's the last Barry Smith issue. Talk about going out on a high, like absolute peak of his powers, just really coming into his powers. Just incredible work. So like having these first 24 issues with the Barry Smith art is just a real treat. It's not to say that what comes next isn't great too, because starting issue 25, the great John Buscema takes over as Conan. And he's actually, I think for a lot of people, for most comic fans, really, it's John Buscema's Conan. It's his Conan that is the Conan. Like, he basically became the Conan artist for decades, and then his version of Conan is sort of the version of Conan that comic fans think of in their head and that other people draw, right? So next time we'll be showing that. So what I'm going to do next time is we're going to do issues 25 to 57, we're going to be covering the beginning of the John Buscema era, and we're gonna show another big block of issues. I'm stopping with 57 because 58 is the first appearance of Belit, and it begins the big Pirate of the Black Coast storyline that runs from issues 58 to 100. So that'll be in the third video. We're going to show that whole block together. But for now, let me know what you think down below. I want to hear from all those Conan fans, all those Barry Smith fans. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think, and I'll see you next time.